Earth to Keith Thurman Jr. Coming, Keith Thurman Jr. That guy, I tell you. I want to start by giving some shout outs to some listeners and to some other folks. I want to start out with some new subscribers to the YouTube channel. Weddy 1888. Welcome aboard. Facts Not Fiction. John O'Neill. Renee De Leon. Abdullah Kowadia. Forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. Alexander Nikolov. Antoine Skates 300. Keita Keys. Ray Rodriguez. Raging Utai. Forgive me if I said that wrong. Gary Pleasant. Jerry Pleasant. Gary Pleasant. Forgive me, but welcome aboard, all you guys. Boxing MMA. Just want to give a shout out to all of you and thank you for subscribing, and to some other listeners and channels. CMD Boxing Reports. Keep doing what you're doing. Duke Odin 7458. What's up? I haven't heard from you in a while, man. Michael Nazarek. Sent him some t-shirts on a couple of occasions. Michael, sorry about if I botched your name. I need to get the proper way to say that to give you some shine in the future. Victor Atkinson, my main man. What's up, Vic? Facebook family. I want to start with a guy named Kevin Silk Walls. Kevin Walls in the early to mid 80s was a high school basketball legend in up there in Camden, New Jersey. Kevin was a McDonald's All-American. He averaged 45 points per game. I mean, lefty. Awesome. And his senior year, they went 31-0. He won a state championship. Then he went to Louisville and won a national championship in 1986, along with his ex-high school mates, William Thompson, Milton Wagner. The Camden connection at Louisville. Great team. And Kevin reached out to me, wanted to talk some boxing about the Crawford fight last night, and it was just good to hear. When I say as a schoolboy that this guy was everybody in the city's idol, I mean, for him to reach out to me about boxing, I didn't even know he knew I was into boxing. I just want to shout out Silk, man, Kevin Walls. And I think a promising pro career got cut short. Kevin severely injured his knee, and he, let's just put it this way, 20, 30 years later, I mean, the guy was still going to get his knee scoped at the hospital. So it just, that part of the story is sad, but he, legend. Facebook, boxer Emmett Linton. He communicates from time to time. If any of you guys are on Facebook, you need to reach out to some of these boxers who I mentioned, because they're active socially. I mean, they will like your comments, will talk to you, will talk about their career and their fights. Because I'm going to tell you something. Boxers, like track and field athletes and what have you, especially in these individual sports, they got egos, man. And when you let them know you remember them or appreciate what they did, I'm telling you, man, it gives them goosebumps, and they'll respond to you. So Emmett Linton is out there. A guy Emmett fought, the Ghost Dog, Sweetness. My man Alan Green. I ain't talked to Alan in a while. Alan, very active on social media. The guy, Alan Green, has always been a guy that just seemed to have a grudge for whatever reason. But I mean, when you start to talk to him on Facebook and especially talk about some of his moments, he'll open up to you, and he'll definitely friend you. He'll be your friend and kick it with you for sure. Maybe the most active guy that I know of, and I give him the business all the time on Facebook, Iceman John Scully. That's my guy. I mean, Ice is just, he recently won an award for his activity in the sport of boxing for many years, and he fought one of my top 5 favorite fighters, Michael second to none, who should be, he did some hard time in prison and should be getting out sometime this year. We hope. We've heard that before, but I think it might be real this time. Keith Holmes, champion. He good fighter out of the Washington D.C. area in the 80s and 90s. Good fighter. He's active on Facebook for sure. He'll talk to you. Keith fought Bernard Hopkins, and he fought Paul Vaden back in the day, and he was a champion. Andrew Council. He actually fought Keith Holmes, another Washington, D.C., Prince George's County area guy. Active, very active. And he fought Bernard Hopkins and Robert Allen. And, of course, as I mentioned, he fought Holmes also. My man Kadi King, okay? Very active on Facebook. So it's K-A-D-Y King. Kadi King was also a good fighter. And Kadi, I hooked up with Kadi on Facebook a couple of years. Or Kadi. I mean, hey, look, depends on where you're from. He's a Midwest guy, like a Kronk Gym type guy. He was looking for a fight of his, and I knew a guy who has a whole lot of fights, and I found some fights of his, and I sent them to him. Man, that guy friended me for life. So, Kadi fought my man O'Neal Bell, Darius Mikulszewski, Julian Letterlow, the whole 9. Good dude, man. Active on Facebook. And Shakur Stevenson, he's active. Now, Shakur Stevenson and Tony Superbad Harrison, both very active on Facebook, but both have the same, I'll call it the same disease. They'll put a post up and it'll get everybody to start sending messages underneath their post active. And then you'll never hear from them again. They might like your comment, at least Shakur will, but then it's like, then you'll start asking them questions about what they never respond until they send the next post, which has nothing to do with the one that you're trying to get commentary on. It's crazy, but they're active. Antonio Tarver, man, Antonio is just, if he doesn't leave 10 Facebook posts per day, and I'm probably exaggerating, but he likes interaction with the fans, so definitely. Amir Mansour, very active. I mean, toughest, meanest guy in the world, but then he'll sit there and he'll answer a question and you're like, okay, man, this guy's not that bad after all. And when he does his road work, he'll go live and you can see him running, and then he'll stop and he'll give a lesson and tell people. So good dude. And the last guy, I don't know if I want to say he's active, but I think he spies on people's channels. And he's the guy we're going to kind of open the show with. Terrence Bud Crawford, the Hunter Crawford. And that's his other nickname, if you didn't know, the Hunter. Terrence, I think, is kind of like Richard Gere in the movie, what's that movie called? Primal Fear, where he was a lawyer and he was cool, but he liked the camera. He liked seeing himself on camera. He would sit in the background and he liked that. And I think Crawford wants to see what people say about him, good or bad. And he kind of lurks, but he's out there. Trust me, he's out there. I know. Okay, so let's talk about the fights last night. I think Shakur Stevenson is looking better. He fought a late replacement, and the late replacement is a veteran who had plenty of fights, but he also had a big layoff. But it was a big step up for him, and he passed it, and he got a stoppage. I mean, when you think Shakur Stevenson, you don't think power. But you can tell Shakur has been working hard, because he's going from being not so impressive to looking good in his last few fights. So he needs to keep working. I think the card, and I could be wrong, but I think the fight card last night is going to do good ratings. And if it does, I'll tell you why in my next video. Well, now, you know what? Actually, I'll tell you now. It's just based on some market research or some indirect research by default that leads to my theory. I have a friend who loved boxing in the 80s and 90s, but then stopped watching. And he texted me Thursday and asked, "Is Terrence Crawford the real deal?" I said, yes. So even though he knows his boxing from, let's say, the 70s, the mid-70s to the 90s, he really doesn't watch it too much today at all. So I can refer to him as what we call a casual fan. Okay? Then another friend of mine who never watches boxing, couldn't tell you much at all about anything historical. On Wednesday, he texted me and asked, "Crawford versus Ndongo, who you going with?" And I had to let him know that fight already happened. And he was like, "Oh, it's on tape." Well, it's coming on ESPN too, and I watch it. He was like, "Ndongo looks big and bad. African nightmare." And then a little while later, he followed up and was like, well, who's better, Crawford or Tank Davis? And I'm like, okay. So he here, and so what that told me is that he probably was looking at, he probably went from ESPN to Twitter and looked at some of the comments that Davis left about Crawford not being impressive or whatever, or I don't think he's anything special or whatever he said. So what I think is going on here, guys, is that casual fans are watching ESPN for sports scores or games or whatever, and ESPN is using some of the time slots to replay fights and boxing specials leading up to live fights. And I think they're catching people's attention with either these fights or these shows, these boxing specials, like the feature they did on Crawford, highlighting the relationship he has with his mother, the love-hate type thing. So my thinking is, if I have two casuals asking me a day apart, the week of the fight, about Terrence Crawford, then I'm using that scenario and saying, okay, people are probably going to tune into this, and this show might do decent numbers. I could be wrong, but it's just like, I just found it like, wow, okay. Two of my guys who aren't really watching it, they watch ESPN, and I maybe they'll, and I need to check with them to see if they actually watch the fight. But anyway, I am shocked by the amount of current and ex-boxers and fans. Well, fans will be fans. I'll leave them out. But I'm shocked by how many boxers, current boxers and ex-boxers, who are saying things such as, well, last night shows you no way Terrence Crawford can beat Errol Spence Jr. I'm shocked at like how many people are saying that and how unimpressive they were with Crawford. Let's slow down a bit. First of all, close your eyes and think basketball for a second. Picture a point guard who is 6 foot tall trying to post up a forward who's 6'5". And the taller guy has a wingspan that is 4 inches longer. It wouldn't look good, right? Now picture a street fight. Two guys about the same size, but one guy's 6 foot tall and the other was 6'5". And the 6'5" guy has a 4-inch reach advantage. Still doesn't look good, right? In either scenario. Well, that's the disadvantage Crawford faced Saturday night. Okay, Crawford is 5'8". Jose Benavidez is 6'1". It doesn't seem like it, but that's the same 5-inch height difference and 4-inch reach advantage that I talked about with the basketball player in the street fight. Don't seem that way, but it is. So Crawford's 5'8", so that's 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1". That's a 5-inch height difference. Don't pay attention to BoxRec. Their stats are incorrect. As you hear the grandfather clock in the background, blowing me up again on another video. Got to time these things better. Okay, BoxRec's incorrect. You're going to hear 11 chimes after this. This is the same BoxRec that said Louis Ortiz had an 84-inch reach to Deontay Wilder's 83 inches. Not true. BoxRec got it wrong. And if you go back to that fight, sometime during the telecast, Showtime reported that BoxRec was incorrect and that Ortiz had a reach like somewhere in like the mid-70s or something. So Terrence had to deal with that height and reach thing, especially early on, but realistically, the entire fight. And I thought he did exceptionally well in doing so. Yet, because he had trouble with a guy who had such advantages, people are extra critical. But they're critical without knowing about the height and reach advantage, mainly because television didn't show it as clearly as it was. But the buck stops there. Listen, the combination of size, reach, height, and awkwardness of Jose Benavidez was a tough puzzle to figure out. But understand, Crawford is a chess player. Yes, he had trouble. Yes, he got buzzed a couple times. But when you look at Spence Jr., Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman Jr., and Danny Garcia, they fight nothing like Benavidez. And let's look at the height of each guy. Spence Jr. is about 5'9" and a half or something like that. Danny Garcia maybe 5'8", 5'8" and a half. Shawn Porter 5'7", 5'6" and some change, whatever you want to call it. Keith Thurman Jr., he's about 5'7", 5'7" and a half, something like that. So we're not looking at a 5-inch height advantage, or if you want to call it 4 inches and say Crawford's 5'8" and Benavidez is 6 even, fine. Call it what you want. It's still, these guys, these potential matchups he has moving forward, you're not going to look at that type of advantage. So it's like he's not, there's not a thing because of height that he'll have trouble coming in to get inside. I mean, it won't be because of height or reach. If you look at Spence Jr., since that's the guy whose name keeps ringing bells, Spence Jr. is a come forward guy, which is exactly what Crawford wants, because he's a counterpuncher by nature, just like Benavidez is. So you had two counterpunchers facing off. You're not going to get that with Spence Jr. and Crawford. Spence Jr. isn't a counterpuncher. He is a come forward guy, and he can't fight any other way. He comes forward, and Crawford will welcome it if and when they fight. It'll be a totally different type of fight than Crawford versus Benavidez. Styles are completely different. But for some reason, fans and more shockingly, boxers weren't impressed last night, and I don't get it. The styles call for a totally different fight, but people seem to take this fight and think Crawford is doomed against Spence Jr. For example, Frazier beat Ali. Okay, let's talk about styles. Frazier beat Ali. Foreman dominated Frazier twice. So that means Foreman beats Ali, right? Wrong. Everybody's judging this performance by saying Crawford can't beat Spence Jr. People talk about how big Spence Jr. is, but size is not going to win that fight. Boxing skills will. When you talk about a guy as good as Crawford, you throw the size thing out. It's about boxing skill. So when analyzing a Crawford versus Spence Jr. fight, I ask myself two things. A, who is the smarter fighter? The fighter that makes adjustments in there. the fighter with the higher ring IQ? And my answer is Bud Crawford. And B, who has the better pure boxing skill? My answer is Bud Crawford. Yes, it'll be the toughest fight of his life, but I think he can walk through the fire. Spence Jr. will be strong early, and he'll go to the body, and he'll try to overpower Bud. But by the 7th round, the tide will begin to turn. I think he beat Spence Jr. by a close but clear decision after breaking him down in the championship rounds. I think he hurts Spence Jr. I just don't know what the hype is about. Benavidez, I mean, he should be happy with how he accounted himself, and he is. I think the body work of Bud took a little gas out of Benavidez. And listen, I could be wrong, but I think Crawford beats Thurman Jr., Porter, Spence Jr., and Garcia if he fights any of them before, let's say, 2021. Okay? Spence Jr. is becoming a bit of a media creation. I mean, you take a guy who is either the #1 or #2 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and you say, no way he beats a guy who is probably outside of the top 10. And why? Who has he beat? Who has he beaten? Who's Spence beaten? I mean, the logical answer is Kell Brook, but let's examine the Kell Brook fight. Okay, let's examine the Kell Brook that Spence fought. First of all, Kell Brook was damaged goods coming off the Golovkin fight when he fought Spence Jr. Okay, that's not Spence Jr.'s fault. All right, but Brook came off a brutal knockout loss to Gennady Golovkin, where his orbital bone was broken. He fought Spence Jr. and his other eye socket was broken, lending to the connectivity theory. You know the old song, the frontal bone's connected to the cheekbone's connected to the nasal bone is connected to the orbital bone. So, despite the injuries, okay, let's look at what Brook attempted to do. Brook tried to do what only one man in boxing history accomplished that I know of. Go up not one but 2 weight classes and then come down not 1 but 2 weight classes in title fights. The only boxer in history to do that I know of was Thomas Hearns, a middleweight, and he got knocked out in his next fight after doing it. So there have been hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of professional boxers, and to my knowledge, only one guy has done it. So the odds are, orbital bone or not, Brook wasn't going to get it done. So Hearns was a middleweight, so he won the WBC, the World Boxing Council World Lightweight Heavyweight title over Dennis Andrews, right? So that's 175 pounds, folks. So he moved up. Then he came back down to middleweight and he beat Juan Domingo Roldan for the world middleweight title. So that's 15 pounds less at 160. Actually, he came in at 159.5, so let's say it's 15.5 pounds less. Then he fought Iran Barkley and just didn't have the legs, and he got stopped. He just didn't have the legs. He never fought at middleweight again. He went to 68 for a few fights and then back to 175 to fight the same Iran Barkley. This time losing a split decision for the World Boxing Association World Light Heavyweight title. So by the time he got back to Barkley, wasn't weight drained. He had his legs, and he did a lot better. A similar situation, similar scenario happened to Kell Brook. He was up in the fight. He was up in the fight with Spence Jr., but then his body, and I'm not talking about his eye socket, his body started to betray him. Remember when Brook challenged Gennady Golovkin and at the 30-day weigh-in and the 10-day weigh-in, Brook was much bigger than Gennady? And then he lost all that weight. Well, if he was much bigger for Golovkin at 160, how much do you think he had to scale down to fight again at 147 for Spence Jr.? You can't do it. Your body won't allow it. Nobody outside of Hearns did it. That I know of. I thought it was a shaky move and one I didn't recommend for Brook, but halfway through the fight, Brook was winning and making me look bad. He actually did a lot better than I thought. Then his body started to betray him. Now, I mean, Spence Jr. had a little to do with that. However, it was more Brook putting his body through something it couldn't do. The weight loss caught up to him, and eventually Spence Jr. did too. Spence Jr. is a good fighter. I mean, I like him. But let's not crown the guy Henry Armstrong yet, okay? Not just yet. He has some defensive flaws that need work. I mean, we saw it briefly against Carlos Ocampo. And I'm not talking about the body shots Ocampo landed. There was a headshot that stunned Spence a bit with about 30 seconds left in the first and last round. And it made him kind of hold Ocampo a little bit, grab his arm and hold him. But nobody seems to want to remember that. And then you got Emmanuel Lartey, who caught Spence with a nice... He caught Spence nice and shook him. And Spence had to grab him. And I think Kell Brook landed some good shots against Spence. So, to his credit, Spence Jr. survived all of those fights, and he remains undefeated. But he needs to work on some things, because someone out there is going to dial something up on him. They're going to just dial something up on him, and it's going to shock many of his fans and followers. I see it happening. Spence Jr.'s resume is a big flag to me. I mean, that's his big flag. He hasn't fought anyone of note outside of Brook. And don't give me the name Algieri, who fought below welterweight all the way up until 2 fights before Spence. Oh, wait a minute. So did Crawford. He's only fought 2 fights at welterweight. So if he fights Spence, the same thing's going to happen to him that happened to Algieri, right? Well, is anyone going to take Algieri over Crawford if they fight? Give me a break. Errol Spence Jr. is good, but he's a bit one-dimensional. I think Crawford solves the puzzle with Spence Jr., and I think he takes him. Crawford is 31 years old, and Spence Jr. is 28. So this ain't exactly Leonard versus Benitez in the age department, okay? Let me add this. Bob Arum is at the forefront asking for this fight. Spence Jr. recently made a comment about politics and how different networks are holding the fight up. Now, I'm going to call the guy that you people call this monster out. I'm going to call him out, and I'm going to use his words and actions, or lack thereof, against him. First, let me use his words. In one interview, Spence Jr. talks about politics and networks holding the fight up. Okay? And then in another interview, he says he doesn't need a promoter. He's his own promoter. He then referred to himself as a free agent. All right, so stop right there. So, EJ, if you are your own promoter and you are a free agent, If Top Rank makes you a sweet offer, you can fight Bud on any network, right? Because you're a free agent. You don't have a promoter. You're your own promoter. Meaning, you can fight on ESPN if they give you the best deal. A free agent, that's what you said you are, who's also a promoter, shouldn't have ties to any network. Okay? We're talking Showtime here, EJ. You follow me? You talked yourself into a hole. You talked yourself into a circle. I mean, it's like, all right, I should be able to name my price. Who cares who I fight on? I mean, if I get the best deal, I fight because you're a free agent. You could settle it. You could fight on DAZN. But the point is, who cares what network you fight? If you're a free agent and the offer is nice, then do it. Here's the thing. Now let me talk about his actions or lack thereof. Here's the thing. Danny Garcia fought Shawn Porter. Danny Garcia fought Keith Thurman Jr. Keith Thurman Jr. fought Shawn Porter. Keith Thurman Jr. fought Danny Garcia. Shawn Porter fought Keith Thurman Jr. Shawn Porter fought Danny Garcia. Errol Spence Jr. fought none of these guys. None. And I'm not saying if he did, he wouldn't win. I'm saying people are making this guy Tyson or Liston, and he's not. He hasn't fought any. It's like Carlos Ocampo. Come on, man. So now his back is against the wall. See, other stations aren't going to preach it like this, but if Errol Spence Jr. doesn't fight Crawford next, then the in-house stuff needs to take place. No more shucking, okay? Then you need to fight one of those three guys who have all fought each other. It only makes sense. And the same people who are using this, it's Bob Arum and Top Rank being on another network excuse. Let's talk about Jamal Charlo. Here's a guy who's done nothing at middleweight. But you keep talking about Canelo Alvarez is ducking him. So I have two problems with that. First of all, Charlo has never headlined a show. Never. You want to throw him in with Alvarez, but he's never headlined a show. And that Julian Williams fight was the lead-in to Mares versus Cuellar. His last fight was the lead-in to Davis versus Cuellar. The fight before that was the lead-in to Garcia versus Broner. So, no need to fact check. He's not headlined a show, a big show. Secondly, how can you say Canelo needs to fight, stop ducking Charlo, and needs to fight Charlo when Canelo fights on a different network? But then you say the network thing is holding up the Crawford fight for Spence. Like, you can't have it both ways, guys. And speaking of fighting Spence Jr., boy, that Mikey Garcia has got you guys fooled. Here's a guy who was about to make $1 million in his next fight, and he decided to leave Top Rank some years ago for a better deal. Top Rank wasn't going to release him, so he sits out 2.5 years, and he comes back to earn what? Some chump change for a fight with Elio Rojas. And in his next fight, he got the big bucks in his next fight. $375,000 for Dejan Zlatikine. I don't know what he got for Lipinets, but for Broner and Easter Jr., he got $1 million. And I don't think Lipinets got him more than $1 million. So you're finally at the $1 million mark. Had he stayed at Top Rank, he'd probably be in the $3 million mark by now. or 3 million and above category, I should say. No matter what, that Spence thing was all talk. When guys have other stuff lined up, he'll call them out. I mean, then when it's time to party, Mikey disappears. I mean, he didn't fight Linares, kept throwing his name out. Then Linares won, and he's like, "What's up?" Mikey disappears. He didn't fight Lomachenko. Said that's the fight he wanted. And then Lomachenko, who I don't think is a call-out guy, decided, all right, yeah, I want that. No, Mikey. He didn't fight Spence Jr. So if they both win their next one, will the Spence Jr. call-out happen again? You gonna call him out, Mikey, and say that's the fight you want? Okay. HBO is waving the flag, and people seem to give Showtime all the credit for that. Well, did Showtime also shut down ESPN and DAZN and Sky Sports Boxing and Box Nation and BR Sports and whoever else? No. This was in the making for years. It was a combination of Peter Nelson being just inept, for lack of a better word, and then the Time Warner deal and some other factors, but not the competition from Showtime. If anything, the streaming situation caused more damage than anything. Your ESPN Pluses, your DAZNs, etc. Why some fans and channels on YouTube are celebrating HBO's demise is disturbing. We have some good fights over the years. Golovkin versus Canelo, Gotti versus Ward, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, Douglas Tyson, Chavez versus Taylor, Tarver Jones 2, and the list goes on. Too many to name. So I think they'll have a few more fights on HBO. They're in discussions to have maybe up to 3 or 4 still remaining. So we'll see. A shout out, forgot one shout out to our favorite boxing judge. You know who I'm talking about. He's been a professional boxing official for 17 years now. Our guy. You know who I'm talking about. Don Trella. Boom banging in your area. Causing mass hysteria. Don Trella. While the Adelaide Bird scorecard caught the fury of everyone, Trella is the reason Golovkin lost his chance at making more history than he already made. His scoring, you know what? His scoring was also off in the Klitschko versus Joshua fight, just as Adelaide Bird's was off for the Spence Jr. versus Brook fight. So you got to pay attention to that stuff, but who's counting, right? Well, Trella was inducted into the Connecticut Boxing Hall of Fame. Maybe he should stay in state and judge fights. Just stay in Connecticut, Don. Anyway, congratulations to our guy, Don Trella, coming to your area, causing mass hysteria. Don Trella. His 114 card for Golovkin deserved the fans' fury. And speaking of fury, I'm leaning toward him at the moment. I have my reasons. We'll see. Did anyone see the Naoya Inoue or Zolani Tete fights? How many of you so-called boxing channels covered it? The Inoue thing was scary. I mean, his power is crazy. But he skipped opportunities by leapfrogging super flyweight. Call it what you want. So even though some of the fighters are old. I'd like to see him fight Nonito Donaire, Louis Neri. And he and Tate appear to be on a collision course, even though Tate's up there in age now. It's a fight I want to see. But there were some Superfly matchups with Saxo Wangek, a.k.a. Rungvisai, Estrada, Chocolatito, Nietes, and Cajas. And that guy, Yafai, that he dodged. I don't know what other word to use. You just got to wonder why he ducked the division. I didn't get a chance to see the Andrew Tabiti versus Ruslan Fafer fight. I'm going to see if I can catch that. I'd like to see Tabiti fight Dorticos next, if Dorticos can get past Masterneck. And Unier Dorticos, I guess people like saying Dorticos more than Dorticos because I guess it rhymes with Doritos, maybe. I don't know. Also got to check out the Artur Beterbiev versus Callum Johnson fight. I heard that was a pretty good one. Or Beterbiev, take your pick. So we'll see. We'll see. I got to check those out. Boxing schedule. So Thursday on ESPN, we got Jason Quigley versus Freddie Hernandez. And I got to be honest, I'm just not impressed with Quigley. I haven't been. Maybe he'll do something. He'll probably beat Hernandez, but I'm just not a Quigley fan. I just don't like. I don't like what I see. Saturday on ESPN or ESPN Plus, I'm not sure. Ryota Murata takes on Rob Brandt. And if Murata wins, Team Golovkin needs to get him on the horn to negotiate a huge payday at the Tokyo Dome. Win that, and maybe you'll get a Canelo rematch next September when you'll be wheeled in to the ring in a wheelchair due to old age, which is what Canelo and probably the WBC wants. That Canelo and WBC rift that they had, I think, was all a smoke screen. They're behind that guy 100%, and have always been. And speaking of Canelo, the plan, in conjunction with the WBC, is to avoid the rematch until Golovkin is well past it. Includes a bogus title fight in New York at 168, his real weight class. And then he'll probably come back to 60 and fight Lemieux in May, and then G in September if everything goes according to plans. Now they need to drug test this guy year round. VADA. And I'll tell you why. Well, and speaking of drug testing, Demetrius Andrade appears to be going through with his fight Saturday against late sub Walter Cortadagua. Cortadagua is a puncher. Okay, in his debut he went the 4-round distance, and he's knocked everybody out since. So he's 17-0 with 16 knockouts. He hasn't fought anybody, and all his fights were in Namibia or Ghana. But you got to be careful with guys like this. Walter's looking to become Jaime Munguia to Andrade's Saddam Ali, so that'll be interesting. And that's on DAZN. Going back to the drug thing, the problem with boxing and drug testing, first of all, Saul Canelo Alvarez needs to be tested by VADA, not the WBC clean boxing program version of VADA. There's a conflict of interest there, and it's a lottery, meaning they may test you or they may not test you. But and I understand the thinking is they force you to stay clean because you don't know if you're going to get tested or not. But to not test. But the problem with that is that they announce the test dates. So if you ever see a guy who, like, there's a date for a fight, and the guy says he's going to sign the contract, but he waits until the last minute and then he signs, he's probably cycling on and off of a drug, because they tell you the dates that the testing is going to start. But the advantage of cycling is you can take that weight off and do things ahead of time, and then have a cutoff date, and then the testing starts, and it doesn't catch you. And he got caught cycling off a little late, I guess, and there were traces of that clenbuterol in his system before. But he needs to be tested, and I'm not so sure he wasn't on something in his last fight. And there's no out of competition or whatever they call that. That's MMA stuff. No. Until we have year-round testing for these guys, no off season and so on and so forth, I'm not buying it. Anthony Yarde's back in action, and then a week later, Daniel Jacobs versus Sergey Deverenchenko. And look, if Jacobs wins, then the Charlo fight should be made. All right, there's your shot at a middleweight title, young Maul. I mean, you two that's a grudge match. If everybody remembers the basement of the Barclays Center. If not, scroll down a few videos and you'll see the interaction between Jacobs and Charlo. Well, it's in-house. I mean, so to speak. You both have the same advisor. There's a title shot for you, Charlo. So, and it's a fight people want. Regis Prograis, Terry Flanagan should be interesting. November 3rd. I'm really interested in the Josh Taylor versus the Ryan Blue Chip Martin fight. You also have Burchelt versus Roman. You got Sully B versus Shawnee Monahan, which is a very good fight for both guys at this point in their career. You got Usyk versus Bellew. You got Hooker versus Saucedo. I'm interested in on ESPN. That's November 16th. I like that fight. Two undefeated guys in a title fight. You got the Fury versus Wilder. And then a week later, you got Lomachenko versus Pedraza. And then a week after that is the Alvarez versus Fielding fight coming from New York. And then a week later, the Jackal, Carl Frampton versus Josh Warrington. My voice is not holding up here, but so I hope these YouTube boxing channels just stop fighting each other, stop taking sides of networks and their fighters. I challenge everyone also that has the boxing channel to use your brain. Don't just go to certain websites and see news and then come on your channel and report it like it's breaking news, like you're breaking it. Stop following the tabloids and use your brains. Be creative. Give us some opinion. Alright, that's it for me. We'll catch you on the next one.